Hello everyone! There are some really great comments on YouTube, but only a few of you will see those conversations if you come across them by chance. In practice, hardly anyone reads comments on YouTube. You are here to watch the videos, not to browse the comment section. So, I came up with the idea of highlighting some comments by explaining the answer in dedicated videos. Someone asked in a comment that if he makes excessive dorsiflexion as seen in the demonstration, he would lose the contact between the forefoot and the sole of the boot. Ankle and foot movements are critical in skiing, but it's not easy to understand them at all for many reasons. First of all, they are hidden in the ski boot. Maybe we can infer them from leg movements, but there are no direct visual cues of the details. On the other hand, the foot and the ankle consist of many bones and joints. Their combined movements are much more complex than those of a simple body part such as the knee. Their complexity makes them hard to understand, but it also offers greater opportunities. It's up to us whether we give up on working it out because it's too difficult, or challenge ourselves to take advantage of the opportunities. There are two important points here. If you can't move your foot, your shin or femur will move instead. Dorsiflexion means that the forefoot and the shin get closer to each other, so if the foot doesn't move, the shin moves forward. In skiing, the best way is to think from the bottom to the top. Closer to the ground, every adjustment is more effective. Smaller movements are sufficient to achieve a greater effect. So, dorsiflexion is the first in the front line in preventing getting back. You have no chance of getting in front by moving your upper body. But simply with a permanent dorsiflexion, you can maintain the base of your fore posture. The same applies to plantar flexion. You can't really press down your forefoot because there is nowhere to move it. Plantar flexion actually moves your shin back. You can ask, if all of this is true, how to maintain a balance support on the sole? If you are stationary in the room, dorsiflexion leaves the ball behind the toes, you will stand on a heel bone and experience a back posture. But what hinders you from rolling forward by maintaining dorsiflexion? This is how you will stay in the ski boot. Even pressure along the sole is not achieved by pressing down the feet. Pressure comes from the forces acting on you. You don't have to create it. It can be gravity or simply some forces, it doesn't matter. The point is how you prepare your foot to receive the pressure. If you press down the forefoot during plantar flexion, the forces will move your body backward. If you keep your ankle in dorsiflexion, the pressure will affect you as a mid or fore posture. If your skis accelerate beneath you and your ankle is in plantar flexion or loose, you will get back just because the angle of the ankles is increasing. But when your ankle is in dorsiflexion and your skis is accelerating, you have a good chance of maintaining the angle of your ankles and preserving your mid posture. There is also another important point. The state of plantar flexion allows for much greater freedom of movement. It sounds great, but in everyday words, it means your ankle is loose. Every effect from the ski will move it, and you must stabilize it if you can, and nobody can. We are not so strong. You can't do so many workouts to be strong enough. If you plantar flex, your ski will be shaky. On the other hand, dorsiflexion restricts the freedom of movement. In practice, in this case, your connection with the skis is much more stable and direct. The foot is not a flat plate. It's a flexible, vaulted structure resting on 3 base points on the heel bone and the 2 balls behind the big and the pinky toe, the head of the 1st and the 5th metatarsal. The arches stretch between those base points. Those arches form a flexible yet stable structure that carries the entire body weight. If it's so, what about the toes? Because someone loses balance, they will press down their toes to increase the area of support. It's an instinctive reaction, but not necessarily the best one. Pressing down the toes leaves the balls behind the toes and the foot loses the stability of the arch structure. Moreover, it transfers the body's load from the natural arch to the muscles of the toes, which aren't strong enough to support it. So, at the bottom line, pressing down the toes weakens the foot structure. We need to know that the foot structure and the subtalar joint set up the muscle tone of the entire body. So weakening the foot structure results in not just worse support, it can ruin every movement of the body. So if you have a technical ski mistake or a postural failure, it often makes no sense to correct them directly because the real root cause may be the poor foot setup. Then what are the functions of the toes? The toes have a secondary role in balance. They shouldn't work so powerfully that they lift the balls behind the toes. On the other hand, the toes extensor and flexor muscles can work in an instinctive cooperation with other muscles, which makes plantar or dorsiflexion in the ankle. It's easier to control toe movements than ankle movements, so you can use your toes as triggers or cheat codes to engage dorsiflexion. In the same way, it's almost certain that when you press down your toes, you will also plantar flex. I don't want to go too deeply into ankle movements, because the ankle is a very complex joint. More precisely, it's not just one joint, it consists of 2 main joints that result in complex movements. Mostly, you can hear some main movements: the dorsiflexion and plantar flexion, pronation and supination, and less frequently rotational movements, abduction and adduction. Before we move on, let's clarify one point that is often mentioned in comments. Many say, and right so, that there is no real freedom of movement in the ski boot. However, it doesn't mean that ankle and foot movements are in vain. Try to look at it from a different perspective. Every movement affects both ends, with the free end moving more. Your intention of moving your feet may not result in real foot movement, but it will result in a shin or femur movement. On the other hand, those muscle actions can act as triggers to activate complex kinetic chains, so a dorsiflexion triggers the hamstrings and the whole posterior chain. In sports, especially in skiing, it's generally true that we need to understand every movement in a wider context. We tend to explain and understand many movements while standing, maybe without ski boots, in a simplified environment. It can be helpful to grasp the basic concept, but in reality, every movement will act very differently. Moreover, sometimes completely in an opposite way. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this content, please show your support by giving a thumbs up or a super thanks. To ensure you don't miss any future videos, please subscribe and turn on the notifications. If you have any questions or disagree with any part of the content, feel free to leave a comment to start a conversation or receive an answer like this one. See you soon.